If you're watching this video, you've probably seen me building a ton of nice homes, talking about multi-million-dollar real estate deals, driving a McLaren, and traveling around the world. And when most people see this, they instantly think that I came from money, that I got lucky somehow, or that I have something special that they don't have, and that achieving the same level of success is not possible for them. But in this video, I want to pull back the curtains and go over my story and exactly how I got to where I am today, because I did not start anywhere near here. From the time I started real estate, it's taken me over 8 years to get to where I am today, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in education and mistakes to know what I know today. And I'm hoping that in this video, I can help you avoid years of trial and error and avoid losing money by doing things the wrong way. My goal is to show you that no matter what position you're in right now, especially if you're in the trades, there is a way out. There is a way and possibility for you to live life by design and the way you've always dreamed of, instead of being stuck working 60, 70, even 80-hour weeks away from home. So in my younger years, we definitely grew up lower middle class. Very grateful for my dad at the time, because he did everything he could to pretty much provide for us and ensure that we had everything that we needed. So we weren't wealthy rich by any means, again, lower middle class you could say, but no complaints obviously, right? Because I lived a pretty good life, at least when I was younger. And then when I was about 10, 11 years old, my dad went to prison. A couple of years after that, my brother followed the same footsteps and ended up in prison as well. I don't blame them. They had to do what they had to do back then. And today they are completely changed men and are Christ driven. So I'm the youngest of three. And around this time, when both of them were in prison, I have an older sister. She went on about her way. It was just my mom and I. And this is when I really got a taste of the struggle. So I witnessed my mom struggle to make ends meet. And that's what kind of, lit up a fire in me. And when I mention struggling to make ends meet, I don't exaggerate by any means. I mean, I know firsthand, and I've experienced and I've lived it, what it is to get your water shut off, to get your light shut off, to have to go to your next door neighbor's house and fill up a big trash bin, you could say, of water. And as I started to grow up, I started realizing, and something clicked, that it was my duty to ensure that we never ran into a similar situation ever again. So since I could remember, I've always been a serial entrepreneur. And I think part of it was because of that fire that was lit in me from a very young age. So starting around middle school time, I started flipping chips. I was the chip guy. And not just chips, I was flipping Gatorades. Anything that you could think of food-wise, I would take it to school in my duffel bag and I would start to sell it. And I remember very, very clearly how I would go about it. So it was just my mom and I around this time, and she had food stamps. Obviously, it was just her and I. She would get a substantial amount every month that we obviously wouldn't spend, so there would be a surplus. And she would give me these food stamps, and I would utilize these same food stamps and go to the store and buy a bunch of snacks that I would sell at school, which I'm pretty sure is illegal, but we had to do what we had to do. So one thing led to another, and I eventually got into sales when I was about 15 years old. I was selling this product called Herbalife, which you might have heard of, and I was very good at it. So ever since then, I knew that I was a salesman at heart, and I did everything that I could to just sell anything that was in front of me. So I also tried a lot of different things, which I'll get into here in a minute. And I was also fortunate enough to work several different jobs, right? So I worked retail. I remember at one point in time, I worked at Blockbuster Video, right? Because it was an hourly rate and it was something a little more stable because the sales weren't really going as planned. And then I ended up working at Lowe's Home Improvement, which eventually led to me working at pawn shops. And this is where I really started to refine my skill set, because my sales was definitely tested here, because we got the best of both worlds. We got commission and we also got an hourly wage. And throughout this time, I was always trying to find things to flip on the Facebook market. Anything that I could find that I could get my hands on for cheap, I would turn around and sell it for a profit. So at the same pawn shop that I was working at, I ended up working my way up the ladder into a manager position. So I had my own store key. I would open and close my own store. What I ended up implementing at this pawn shop that I was at was I started to flip gold. So out on the sales floor, we had all sorts of gold that wouldn't sell, right? So after about 3, 4, 5 months, we'd have to send it out to get scrapped. And we would get pennies on the dollar for this, so the company would take a loss. So what I would do is I had somebody else come into the store and buy it right below cost, which was still very, very good for us, because I would get permission from, my upper management, and they would approve it, obviously, because they were just gonna turn around and take a bigger hit on it. So I would get permission to sell it to myself, obviously behind closed doors, because nobody knew I was actually buying the gold myself. And this is exactly what I started doing. So right before we took it out to scrap towards the end of the month, I would have somebody come in, obviously with my funds, with my money, and pick up a lot of gold, right? Very, very cheap at around $17.50. And just down the road, another pawn shop would buy it for $18.50. So even though it wasn't much difference across a couple thousand grams, there was a little bit of money to be made. And that was the first time I started making, a good amount of money. The pawn shop money wasn't really making too much of a dent. And around this time, I was making maybe $25,000, $30,000 a year, plus what I was flipping and stuff on the side, but it still really wasn't substantial. It wasn't enough money to change my life. Around this time, my brother got out of prison. My dad was already out of prison, but in Mexico, because when he first went to prison, they stripped him from his permanent residency, so he's never allowed to come back into the United States ever again. And even though I've never relied on my dad ever in my life financially, he's always been there for me to provide advice and has allowed me to stay Christ-centered because he's always instilled a lot of faith in me, which I'm very grateful for. So back to the realization, I realized that this money that I was making wasn't enough to change my life. My brother was also fresh out of prison, so he didn't really have too many options. And my dad was also very resourceful, so he knew a lot of people out in the trades. And this is when I decided to take that leap and go into the trades. So we secured our first gig as tradesmen working out in the pipeline in West Texas, and I'll get into that here in a second. But I always remembered that through working at pawn shops, I would watch these guys come in very, very often, I'm assuming during layoff, and they would pawn these big fat chains that they had, and they would always pull up in the big trucks, and again, they had big chains and big bracelets and everything. So I knew these guys were making money for sure, but obviously they were spending it irresponsibly, right? They were trying to seek validation from other people. They were trying to live a life that they could not keep up with. And I had always thought to myself, man, maybe if I go out and do the same thing, but I'm a lot smarter, I'm a lot more mindful, I'm a little bit more strategic with the funds that I'm gonna be generating, I could probably save up enough money and start investing and do this the right way. So it's crazy how things work. One thing led to another. I got an opportunity to get my foot in the door as a tradesman, and off we went to West Texas. So we started working in pipeline in a small town called Wing, Texas. This lasted a few months before we became electricians and started working out in refineries for about a year. And then I got my foot in the door as an iron worker building wind turbines. And I loved it, man. It was the best. This was the first real money I had ever gotten my hands on and I had ever touched. I was making real money now, you know, 6 figures a year, which is more than most can say, especially here in the RGV and in South Texas where I'm from. I was traveling the United States, going state to state, job site to job site, just crushing it, man, making money. I was working with all my boys. The camaraderie was great, and it was awesome, man. Once again, it was the first real money that I had ever touched. So this lasted a couple of years. I was traveling the country, job site to job site. Not once was I ever laid off because of my hard work, I'm assuming, but slowly something started to click again. And I realized that I was busting my ass, breaking my back, you know, 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks, time away from home, you know, missing holidays like Christmases, Thanksgiving, weddings, birthdays, you name it, I missed it, right? I was always out there working. And I started to realize that this wasn't the way I wanted to live my life, and that there was something else out there, that there was more out there, that I was meant for more and that I could do something for myself. So I realized that everything that I was doing, sacrificing my time, energy, effort, my body, that I was doing that for others, but I knew deep down that I couldn't do it forever. So when this clicked, I knew that I slowly and strategically had to start planning my way out. So I tried a bunch of different things and I started saving all of my money. I was very frugal and I was very intentional about this. I would literally dissect my bank account to see where I could save money. Anything that I was spending money on that I didn't have to spend, I wouldn't spend it. So I started flipping vehicles, I was flipping guns, I was still flipping gold at this time. I remember I would buy these AR-15 kits online, I would build these AR-15s and I would flip them for $500-600. I would buy a lot of vehicles as well on Copart, or even vehicles that were just banged up. I would take them to Mexico because my dad was in Mexico. We'd fix them up and we'd flip these cars. So slowly I was very, very intentional about saving. I didn't worry about seeking validation from people that didn't matter to begin with. I knew that there was far more out there if I just focused on the bigger prize. So as I was still working out there doing a bunch of different things to just multiply my capital, and again, just being very intentional about saving, I even remember at one point in time, I was driving a 2004 Toyota Corolla while I had 200 grand in the bank. Now keep in mind, this did not happen overnight. This was 5 years of me saving and being intentional about this. So while I was doing this, all glory to God, I stumbled across a YouTube video about real estate and something clicked, a light bulb went off. And also I had friends in common, I had acquaintances, and I also would scroll on social media and see people doing big things with real estate. And I knew that I had to tap into real estate one way or another. So what I did was I bought my first fourplex. I remember getting an FHA loan, going through the qualification process because I had really good income. Remember, I was working out in the trade, so my W-2 is great. I had tax returns and everything, so everything penciled out for me. And I remember that I qualified for around $500,000. And I was very close to buying a really big house. Once again, falling into that trap, you know, trying to keep up with the Jonases because I had other friends and other people that I knew that had nice houses and nice cars and everything. I was very close to buying a really big house, and I thank God that I made the right decision and that I didn't take that route. Instead, I bought what's called a fourplex because this YouTube video that I stumbled across was about house hacking, how you could live in one unit and you could rent the other 3 units out. So I knew that that was the way. Back when fourplexes were accessible and when they were affordable, because now they're definitely a rich man's game, which I'm gonna get into here in a little bit. So I went ahead and I bought this fourplex. I remember it was around $293,000. Again, back when they were affordable. It was an FHA loan, 3.5% down. I had to bring about $20,000 to the closing table after closing costs. And then I became obsessed with real estate. I started becoming very intentional about the books that I read, and everything was all about real estate for me because I knew this was my way out. So when I first bought this fourplex, I started to cash flow around $400 to $500. This was when I first bought it. So after, for those of you that don't know what cash flow is, after paying my principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, I was left with a surplus of around $400 to $500. So then I started thinking to myself, this is it. This is what I have to do. I just have to continue replicating this so I could eventually escape the trades. Little did I know I was totally wrong, but I was still stuck with this mindset early on. So I went on to buy multiple properties, right? I bought 3 other single family homes throughout my career out in the trades. Same thing, I would fork up these fat down payments only to cash flow a couple $100s per month. And I thought I was doing everything right. But then I started to realize that sure, I was asset rich, but I was cash poor, because again, I was saving all of my hard-earned money and dollars into these down payments only to cash flow a couple of $100 per month. All because I was sold on this idea of building a magical cash flowing portfolio that would somehow allow me to retire on a beach somewhere. But little did I know I had it all backwards. So around this time that I went all in, I went to an investor meetup locally. And in this investor meetup, I met a young guy that was just crushing it in the wholesale space. And he talked to me about how he had just made over 6 figures, $100,000 on one single deal. And this was just mind blowing to me. This was like, what is going on? What have I been doing this entire time? And I just realized that I was being lied to, and that there was a different way, and that there was another way for me to actually make it in real estate. And this deal that he had just closed was a wholesale deal, meaning he sourced a distressed property, he got it under contract, and he found an end buyer that was willing to pay $100,000 more than what he had it under contract for. And again, this was mind blowing to me. And I realized that there was other ways in the game of real estate, other avenues that I could take to make real money that I could then utilize to invest into passive real estate. So again, I had it all wrong, and this was definitely a wake-up call for me. So I started to solely focus on active income strategies. So I was honestly pissed at this point that it took me so many years to build this small portfolio, and this guy just made a 6-figure fee in a couple of weeks. But on the bright side, I knew exactly what to do next. And even though I knew nothing, I did everything that I could to seek the answers to all of the questions that I had about active income strategies. So I started buying into mentorships, looking for solutions, and I'm glad I did. Again, I've spent about 6 figures in my personal development and in my personal education at this point, and it was hands down the best decision that I've ever made. So I then shifted all of my focus entirely to active real estate and not passive, like this dream that I had been sold on. I still remember my first deal like it was yesterday. It was a wholesale deal, it was an assignment fee. I sourced a nice deal in the city of Alton. It was a fix and flip. I got it under contract for around $90,000 and I sold it for around $110,000, and I made $20,000 off of one deal. It was mind blowing to me. And then I just became obsessed. Day in, day out, I focused all of my time to sourcing deals, cold calling, and doing everything that I could to just stack deals. And only then it was through these active income real estate strategies that I was implementing that I was able to passively invest into real estate without it making a dent in my bank account. And it actually started to make sense, because before I was using my hard-earned money and dumping these large down payments to only cash flow a little bit, but now I could make these investments comfortably, and I can make these substantial down payments where the deals even look a lot healthier. And one thing led to another. I've done over 300 real estate deals in my career. I got into fix and flips. I flipped tons and tons of homes. Now I'm more so focused on new construction and new development. That's kind of my bread and butter right now. And it was through these active real estate strategies that I was able to turn my life around and live it by design. Now I live a life beyond my wildest dreams. I've been all over the world with my wife. I work on my own schedule. I'm not stuck working 60, 70-hour weeks, busting my ass, breaking my back. I'm very grateful that I'm able to do whatever I want now, when I want. I'm not glued to some 9-to-5 or some job site, stuck out in the middle of nowhere. I've been able to provide financial opportunity for others, put people on, help others, bless my family and those around me, all because of real estate. With that being said, I want to be very clear that the main point of this video is not to show you that money is the most important thing out there or that it brings you happiness. Instead, I want to emphasize that money is simply the vehicle that will allow you to have experiences and a lifestyle that makes you happy. It's simply just a tool. Because for me, when I was stuck working in the trades, literally working from dawn until dusk, sleeping in hotels or my RV for months at a time away from my family, I was definitely not as happy as I am now. But it wasn't because I have more money. I wasn't broke in the trades. I made good money. It's the fact that I now have freedom. I'm able to sleep in my own bed every night, see my family every day, work when I want, and travel the world without having to ask for permission. Now, before I wrap up this video, I want to obviously thank you for watching until the end, but I also want to give you an opportunity, if you're interested in learning exactly how active real estate works, so you can use it yourself to escape the trades or even just a regular 9-to-5. There's a link in the description breaking down exactly how it works and how to work with me so I can personally guide you along your journey.